Billy Carson walked into this interview very confident of his knowledge, that he was armed with hidden text to challenge the traditional beliefs about the Bible, Jesus, and his crucifixion. But everything changed immediately Wes responded. If you're new here, welcome to Tell Me Dr. K, a channel manipulative religious leaders wish you never discover. Because on this channel, we cut through the noise to uncover what is beneath. If this is your first time, or it is not, but you have never subscribed, kindly do me a favor. Subscribe and smash the notice bell so that you help us to continue bringing you deep dives like this one. In the next 3 episodes, I'm going to analyze a debate between Billy Carson and Wes Huff. It's actually one of the most shocking debates on religion that I've ever watched. So I'll do 3 episodes to analyze this infamous debate, and you understand why it is infamous. Billy Carson walked into this interview very confident of his knowledge, that he was armed with hidden text to challenge the traditional beliefs about the Bible, Jesus, and his crucifixion. But everything changed immediately Wes responded. His calm, surgical fact-checking leaves Billy stunned, and the internet explodes with reactions, memes, and the breakdowns of the takedown follows. In this episode, we are going to discuss the crucifixion forgeries. Billy opens the debate convinced that he has an explosive evidence that disapproves the crucifixion of Jesus. He speaks with absolute confidence, ready to rewrite history. But when Wes answers with a real manuscript expertise, the shift is immediate. And the internet hasn't stopped talking about his dismantling of Billy's claim ever since. In this episode, we put Billy's 3 key sources under scrutiny. Each time Billy cites a mysterious or sensational document, Wes responds with academic precision, exposing errors and forgeries. What follows is one of the most talked about fact checks online, the Sinai Bible mix-up. Billy confidently cites the Sinai Bible as proof that Jesus was never crucified. But Wes immediately clarifies whether he means the Codex Sinaiticus, and respectively explains that the crucifixion absolutely appears in the manuscript. Billy's opening argument collapses, and viewers immediately notice the shift. Here is the clip.
And in my videos, and if you listen to the podcast, the statement is according to the Sinai Bible, okay? According to the Sinai Bible, Jesus wasn't crucified in that Bible. And that Bible predates the King James Version of the Bible. And the text there actually is about 12 to 14,000 differences between the Sinai Bible and the King James Version of the Bible, which came much later. I just personally believe that Jesus was an amazing human being. I don't think that he was the Son of God in the sense that he's God, but that we're all gods. As he said, ye are gods, and that we're to do greater things in him. And I just personally believe that the return of the Christ is the return of the Christ consciousness. When we can all achieve a certain level of knowledge, wisdom, passion, understanding, empathy, love that he came to this planet with, and we get that in our mind and our conscience, and we can act on those incredible emotions and that understanding, that the whole world is going to transform instantaneously. And I think that the second coming is the coming of the Christ consciousness to the planet, not a human being flying back to Earth to save people. That's just my personal understanding of how I've perceived it over many years of going through this information and going through all this text.
Yeah, well, first let me say, I think it's really cool to not just be in the room proverbially with you, Billy, but be able to interact with you, because I wish I could be there in person. Unfortunately, Toronto, Canada is a long way away from Florida. It's a little bit of a jaunt. But I really appreciate the fact that you seem to have investigated to a certain degree some of these facts. Do you mind if I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
When you say the Sinai Bible, what are you referring to specifically?
It's the biblical text that was written. It made it into you can actually look it up on Amazon. It's a Bible called, I have a version at home. It's called the Sinai Bible, right, from Mount Sinai. I'm assuming that's the mountain that they're referencing there. But they put together their own version of the biblical text prior to the King James Version being put out.
Sure. So when you refer to the Sinai Bible, would you be referring to Codex Sinaiticus? Like the codex that comes? Okay. That's why I was trying to get some clarification, because so you can actually go and see Codex Sinaiticus is at the British Library. So you can go and see it. It's on display. And the British Library has actually digitized the entire manuscript. So I work with manuscripts in my linguistic work. I'm an expert on early Christian scribal culture, and particularly in Greek and Coptic manuscripts. I actually have a facsimile. So I have a photocopy that was done by the British Library of Codex Sinaiticus that I work with in my office. So I have it here. And the only reason I asked for clarification is because I want to make sure that what I'm addressing is actually what you mean.
Gotcha.
And not addressing something else. Because the Codex Sinaiticus in particular is just it's a 4th century Greek manuscript. Mm-hmm. It comes from approximately between 325 and 350 AD. And its text of the Gospels reads almost identical to the modern Greek text that we develop translations from. So my curiosity is just simply in kind of exploring, when you say that it denies the crucifixion or that the crucifixion isn't there. I mean, I can go on right now, Codex Sinaiticus, and I can look up the end of, say, Matthew 27, mm-hmm. where it has Jesus being crucified. And that's in Codex Sinaiticus, or, the John 19, or any of the other ones. So I think my confusion is that it doesn't read any differently. So I think what I'm getting at is, so I'm a historian. Yep. And I deal with sources. So when I'm looking at sources, I want to make sure that I have a methodology by which I approach any type of source. So if there is something that denies the crucifixion, I want to make sure that I'm analyzing it, and that the methodology by which I analyze it actually reveals that the content can be accurately tied to the event. So if we're talking about, say, Codex Sinaiticus, that's in the 4th century. Now that is, I would agree with you, Billy, our oldest copy of the Bible in the sense of cover to cover, Genesis to Revelation copy of the Bible.
Right.
The problem is that we have individual copies of all 4 Gospels going back hundreds of years before Codex Sinaiticus. So I have a facsimile behind me of P66. This is a late 2nd century copy of the Gospel of John. I work with this particular manuscript. I can just show the screen right here. This is an almost complete copy of the Gospel of John. And it has the crucifixion.
By any chance?
Actually, are you able to pull up a website with the viewers or listeners or whatever be able to see that?
Right now to make sure I have the version that I'm looking at.
Where was that piece
I found
discovered?
the text where I was referencing. Actually, I was misquoted. I misquoted there. It's the Gospel of Barnabas.
The Gospel of Barnabas forgery. When Billy switches to the Gospel of Barnabas, he presents it like a hidden bombshell. West dismantles it in seconds. It's a medieval forgery with Dante quotations and historical errors. This moment became one of the most clipped, shared, and memed part of the debate online. Here is the clip.
Okay, yeah, well, so that's good. So let's deal with that too, because I've actually worked with, there are 2 manuscripts of the Gospel of Barnabas. The Gospel of Barnabas is a really interesting document because it is a known forgery. And so that's why I think it's important to get to these sources. So at the very start of the Gospel of Barnabas, which we only have 2 copies of, one is in Italian and one is in Spanish. We see right off the bat that the Gospel of Barnabas, not to be confused with either the Epistle of Barnabas or the Acts of Barnabas, which are 2 apocryphal documents from the 2nd century, but the Gospel of Barnabas in particular, we know it's a forgery because it does things like in chapter 92, it says that Jesus spent 40 days on Mount Sinai, and then he came to the Jordan River and he walked to Jerusalem. But Mount Sinai is more than a week's journey away from Jerusalem, and neither Mount Sinai nor Jerusalem are close to the Jordan River. So never mind there not being a route from the Jordan River to like around Mount Sinai or going to Jerusalem. But there are internal problems with the Gospel of Barnabas, which indicate that it shows no actual indication of evidence of coming from or even having knowledge of first century Jewish understanding. It actually says Jesus is the Christ, but not the Messiah, which indicates that whoever the author is, he didn't know that those were the same words. And I think a bigger problem is that the Gospel of Barnabas actually paraphrases Dante's Inferno, which was written in 1314. So there's a lot of internal evidences that disqualify the Gospel of Barnabas, never mind the fact that we don't have any evidence of it prior to the 14th century, and none in any other language other than Middle Age Italian Italian and Spanish. But the internal content of the Gospel of Barnabas disqualifies it from being ancient. And then the fact that it's doing things like paraphrasing Dante, or it also refers to a rule of the time of Jubilee, which was changed in the Middle Ages from what it was in the biblical year of Jubilee. And it goes with the Middle Ages concept, not the ancient concept. The only hesitation I have with what you said, Billy, is that we have single copies of the Gospels that can be dated to the 2nd century that all do have the crucifixion. And so if we're relying on something like the Gospel of Barnabas, which is not just like, it's not that there's debate about it, it's that it's a known forgery. I mean, no one's referring to the Gospel of Barnabas as anything other than...
If you say it's a known forgery, yes, but I'm going to go with that.
The Gospel of Jesus' wife. It doesn't even make sense. So Billy throws the Gospel of Jesus' wife as his final blow, but West reveals it as a forgery, copied from the modern PDF of the Gospel of Thomas, typo and all. And the internet immediately crowned this PDF document, calling it the point Billy's argument fully collapsed. Here is the clip.
And then also, one of the things that were interesting is that they discovered the book of Jesus' wife, which is at the Harvard Seminary, which, according to some scholars, is a little controversial, but they claim that this is an accurate record that Jesus may have even been married, which then, adds more, if that's true, it adds more to the hypothesis that maybe he wasn't crucified. Let's talk about the Old Testament a little bit and leading up into the New.
Well, hold on, because do you mind if I address the Gospel of Jesus' wife?
Sure, go ahead.
I'm just curious.
So the Gospel of Jesus' wife doesn't actually mention. So oftentimes what happens is that the text of the Gospel of Jesus' wife is kind of paralleled with the Gospel of Philip, which mentions that that Jesus would kiss Mary Magdalene on the mouth. And so those are kind of used in parallel to kind of for this argument that Jesus was married. So the Gospel of Jesus' wife is in the Harvard Library. However, the reason we know it's also not legitimate is because even though the manuscript, the papyrus that it's on, was carbon dated to the 4th century, the text was actually copied from a PDF version of the Gospel of Thomas known as Grandin's Interlinear. And there was a mistake in the Coptic text of Grandin's Interlinear that was copied into the Gospel of Jesus' wife. So we know that this is not a legitimate document, even though the papyrus is ancient, and this happens a lot with forgeries. I have a couple of friends who have actually worked on projects that have revealed forgeries within Dead Sea Scroll manuscripts and within other ancient Christian papyri. But the reason why we know the Gospel of Jesus' wife, and that Karen King, who kind of vouched for it and she lost a lot of credibility, unfortunately, for her, and she's admitted that it's a fake as well, was because we can tie it directly to not copying from an ancient text, but actually copying from an online version of the Gospel of Thomas in a PDF form. And the mistake on that PDF form was copied into the text that was borrowed in the phraseology apology of Jesus' wife. So I just point that out is, once again, with our sourcing, I think we need to make sure that we're going towards not just early sources, but actually credible sources. And unfortunately, neither the Gospel of Barnabas nor the Gospel of Jesus' wife are credible sources in terms of actually, and agreed upon by not just the vast majority of scholarship, but I don't know anybody in the field of papyrology, paleography, historiography, who actually refers to these documents as being legitimate.
That's fair enough. I can respect that.
All three Billy sources were proved false, misidentified, or forged. Now, Wesley's responses were not just corrective, they were devastating. The internet praised his composure and expertise. Episode 1 ignited massive discussions across theological channels. When I do these 3 episodes, I'm going to share with you another video of Billy's reaction against Wes after the fact. And let me also mention that at some point, Billy ran out of that debate. If you enjoyed this video, kindly like, subscribe, and smash the notice bell for more. To watch other Wes Huff deep dives, click on this link.